right, back here at the NFL Combine, live in Indianapolis. Chris Brown, Maddy Glab with you on a Friday. It's an OBL Friday fan mailbag, so any question you've got about the Bills, the Combine, the draft class, what could be coming our way offensively, let her rip. You can hit us up with your questions at One Bills Live on Twitter, X, whatever you call the app these days. But in the meantime, we wanted to kind of spin you around this draft class to tell you what the prospects are saying about the Buffalo Bills, whether it's their general knowledge of them, what they think of players on that roster, the coaching change, what have you. Maddy has been dutifully taking notes on that because she actually has to put a story together on it for BuffaloBills.com. So I will turn it over to you, Maddy, in terms of why don't we begin here?
Do you want to start with wide receivers?
Sure, we can do that. I guess I was going to ask you, and maybe this might be too hard to search through your copious notes there. I was going to ask you what was the most interesting thing that kind of maybe even caught you off guard that wasn't the typical, oh, yeah, I had a really good meeting. I like that player and this player. Was there anybody that had anything?
I thought so what we do to gather all this stuff is the team back in Buffalo. We go through every prospect and we figure out who is connected to the Buffalo Bills, the current roster of the Buffalo Bills. And you saw a ton. I mean, Jordan Hancock, who was a rookie last year from Ohio State, had a million connections to all the Ohio State players. He had the most interesting connection. So I had a fun time writing about defensive tackle, nose tackle, Caden McDonald out of Ohio State. Caden and Jordan Hancock grew up a block away from each other, not in Ohio. It's not like they're Ohio boys who decided to go to Ohio State. They're from Suwanee, Georgia, and they grew up a block away. He talked about how they played AAU basketball together and won a tournament together. He said, I used to walk over to his house all the time when I was a kid, and our families are really close, and I have so much respect for him, and I would love to link back up with him in Buffalo. It would be a blessing to be back on his team. And if you're wondering, okay, who is Caden McDonald? Played for Ohio State, 6'2", 326 pounds, had 3 sacks in his career, 85 total tackles, All-America honors in 2025, and won the Big Ten Conference's Smith-Brown Defensive Lineman of the Year award. So I thought that was the coolest connection that I came across. Another guy who was fun to listen in on was Red Murdoch out of UB, because it's always nice to see a University at Buffalo guy here at the NFL Scouting Combine, and he spoke about how much pride he has representing UB, knowing that he's representing for guys who didn't get an opportunity and guys who are going to come after him. He spoke about Joe Andreessen and Sean Dolak and really being thankful that he got to learn from them and play with them, and said, I'd be happy to stay in Buffalo. The cold doesn't bother me. It'd be amazing to play next to Joe Andreessen. So that was a fun conversation to have and cool to shine some light on UB.
I've seen him play. I've seen some of his tape. And Red has a physical presence. I'm just going to say that. You notice him right away. He hits people hard. And he's certainly got the requisite size. I think he's 6'2", 232. And if he times well here, he could go from a late day 3 pick to an early day 3 pick. There's a lot on the line for a guy like that. So timing well will do enormous things for his draft stock. Because we talk all the time. You got some guys that their draft stock is so high, they're like, I'm not even going to work out. Marvin Harrison Jr., for example, a couple of years ago. For a guy like Red Murdoch, testing well here is almost literally for all the marbles. It can make a huge difference, I think, for his draft stock. And last year we had Sean Dolak on our show, Steve and I did, leading up to the draft. I think it was like a week before the draft we had him on, and talking to him, wishing him good luck and everything. Because I thought he was going to be like a 6th round pick somewhere in there, and he ends up going undrafted, and the Rams signed him. And you look up, you pick your head up in midseason, and there's Dolak making plays, largely on special teams, but did get some run on the defensive side of the ball. So, yeah, we've seen it happen before, especially at that position, the linebacker position. So I think Red's got a shot, and, we're rooting for him to test well here so he can improve his draft stock.
17 forced fumbles during his career at UB.
I think it was an FBS record.
That's an NCAA record. Yeah, and he ranked second in the NCAA in total tackles the last 2 seasons, both well over 100. So
uber productive.
Yeah. And he was asked about his speed and said, I make up for that and how hard I hit people. So it will be interesting to see what that 40 time is. Other players who had interesting connections to the Bills, there is a defensive end, Wesley Williams, who played for Duke. Him and Dwayne were pretty tight, and he just spoke about
Dwayne Carter.
Yeah, Dwayne Carter. He just spoke about Dwayne Carter's character and how going to Duke, that's, you really try and embody to have a great character. And said that Dwayne was somebody who he really followed after, looked up to, and said that he would love to get an opportunity to play with him. He's Wesley Williams, this defensive end, is 6'3", 265 pounds, had 131 total tackles across his career, 11 sacks, and he was a team captain last season, honorable mention, All-ACC. So that's a little bit of information on him. If you're looking at the wide receivers, so Denzel Boston, who has been a favorite name surrounding getting mocked to the Buffalo Bills. He's been mocked several times now to the Bills at 26. I asked him what it would be like to catch passes from Josh Allen, and he said it would definitely be special. He said that's the top quarterback in the country or in the world, and he said that to be able to do that would be spectacular. So it's always fun listening to these wide receivers and see them light up when you talk about a quarterback like Josh Allen. Boston did say he met with the Bills as well. And then Tennessee wide receiver Chris Brazzell, who is a taller wide receiver. I want to get I think he's 6'4", 6'5", 200 pounds. And you can see that with him, the way that he plays on the field. He really uses his size to his advantage, and also has some speed about him as well. Even though he's 200 pounds, he is speedy. He's fluid, good body control. I asked him about the Buffalo Bills. He said, I did not have a meeting with the Bills. Still wanted to ask him about Josh Allen, though, and he said that's his favorite quarterback to watch because of the way that he plays the position, because of his physicality and his talent. Said I would love to match up with a quarterback like that.
Yep, he's entertaining to watch. We all know that.
And then it was also cool to hear from some of these players who overlapped with some of our new coaches. Because defensively, we have hired a lot of coaches that come straight out of college football. For example, cornerbacks coach Jay Valai. So we asked defensive end R. Mason Thomas about Jay Valai, who also spent time at Oklahoma, and said that he really did a fantastic job of developing young players. He said he developed 2 freshmen who became All-Americans quickly, and said he's a players coach who believes in his players, and he wants to get the best out of them. I also talked to another wide receiver today about Jay Valai, Dion Burks, out of Oklahoma, and he said that it was tough going against Jay Valai in practice and just that cornerbacks group, and said that Jay Valai always made it hard on us wide receivers, but a really great coach. You're going to get great things out of him with the Bills. So it was fun to kind of put 2 and 2 together and hear about that. Also spoke to a Stanford player on defense, and he spoke about Bobby April, who is the outside linebackers coach for the Bills now. He was a defensive coordinator with Stanford for a few seasons, and he said that Bobby April is somebody who held his players to a very high standard, had a very versatile defense at Stanford, and said that he did a great job of focusing on individual talent versus group talent. So just a little bit about the new coaches. You're hearing it from guys who spent years with these coaches.
Yeah, that's some cool connections there for sure. I'm not staying here through the weekend, but I always like hearing from players, and we got more coming through over the weekend because the testing doesn't end until Monday. It's interesting what you can pull from the players just in the interview settings here for the media. And, Concepcion just talking about being born in Rochester and his dad's from there, and he's a Bills fan, and how he watched Bills games as a kid because his dad always had the game on. and be an honor to play for them. That's like, oh my gosh, like, can you imagine if the Bills draft that guy? And they interviewed him, so.
Somebody who's not going to be available for Buffalo at number 26, who did talk about the Bills because there's an Ohio State connection there. Linebacker Sonny Styles, who played at Ohio State, overlapped with Jordan Hancock for a couple seasons. And he said that Jordan Hancock reached out to him before this week and gave him some advice just to be yourself, be confident. You've done enough to get to this position. Just go out there and don't stress and ball out. And then said he wouldn't mind being back in Buffalo with him. He said, that's my guy. Because Styles ran a 4.46 because of his size at 6'5", 244 pounds. He's going to be off the board in the top 10.
A 244-pound man jumping 43.5 inches is redonkulous.
Yeah.
Like, that's just stupid. And then he's 11.2 in the broad jump. And I think he even had a really good short shuttle. It was in like the 4.2s. So for a man that's 6'5", 244 doing all of those things, it's nuts. And we get stunned by it every year here by a couple of people. And we're like, how are they doing that?
How do these athletes exist?
And, his teammate Arvell Reese was almost as good. So, yeah, they killed it yesterday. And, look, there's going to be some DBs that burn up the track today. There's just the athletes and the training and the advances there just have really pushed the limits of what the human body's capable of, especially when it's blessed with enormous athletic ability, which dollars to donuts is just about everybody that got invited here. So the testing is interesting because you really see where the training is going to make these guys excel in all of this testing. But the explosiveness, the explosive testing, which is basically your 10-yard split on the 40-yard dash, and then vertical leap, broad jump. Those are the explosive testing metrics that teams rely upon to know if you have an edge guy, how good is his get-off? Oh, he vertical leap 38 inches? Okay, check that box, Broad jump 10-10. Check that box. And then is his 10-yard split 1.6 or under? And if it is, you can probably check that box too. So there's value in all of that stuff. It was interesting, though, today, Maddie, because the receivers some of them were delayed today by almost 2 hours.
We've gotten that all week.
Right. And I think, just so people are aware, sometimes the problem is these players all go in the order in terms of their position numbers. And when they get to the medical testing, they go into 6 or 7 different rooms because all the doctors that work for all 32 teams in the league, along with independent doctors, are here to pull, prod, check every joint, full examination, the works. And then those exams are shared amongst the teams. If you have a guy with an injury history and he goes in there and they're being extra thorough and it's taking longer for that medical exam to finish, the 5 guys behind him waiting in line for their medical are going to be delayed out here at media. And sometimes they don't even get here. So we were wondering about that with Omar Cooper Jr., who was supposed to talk at 10:30, didn't get here till about 12:40. So I don't think it was him, but I wouldn't be surprised if there was somebody in front of him in the medical lineup that got delayed, and then in turn he got delayed in a domino effect there. Because that has happened before here.
And each group is doing different things. So the first group that meets with local media every morning, those guys aren't delayed because that's their first thing of the day. They eat breakfast and then they go straight here to meet with media. So those guys aren't off schedule because then they do the medical after they meet with the media. So they've always started the day on time. It's just the groups that come after that first group that usually get hung up in medical stuff, and that delays the rest of the day of media availability.
Yeah. Which is not good for them either, because now their day is longer. And the days are long here for the 3 or 4 days that they're here, because once they finish with media, they might go to lunch and then right into interviews. Some will, be all night doing those. 6, like the popular players that everybody wants to talk to, talking to like 16, 17 teams here. Like,
and you're up early.
Just think about going to 16, 17 job interviews, sometimes 8 or 9 in a row over the course of 2 nights. It's like, bro, what else are you got to ask me? Like, oh, it's a new team. You don't know anything? Okay.